What if I told you that the voice inside your head right now, like the one you think is entirely exclusively yours, doesn't actually belong to you?
I mean, it sounds like the premise of a sci-fi movie, right?
Pretty totally.
But it's actually the starting point for rethinking, well, everything we know about human psychology.
Right. So to kick off this deep dive, I want to set a scene for you, the listener.
Please do.
Just imagine you are standing alone on a quiet shore at dawn. The tide is out, the air is dead still, and your footprints are the only marks on the wet sand.
That's a very evocative image.
Thanks. And in that specific moment, you probably feel completely solitary, self-contained, like you're a sovereign island of consciousness in an otherwise indifferent universe. And it feels beautiful.
It is deeply beautiful. And it is also the ultimate illusion.
The ultimate illusion.
Yeah, it's this specific illusion that modernity has absolutely perfected. We're raised on this deep-seated belief that you are a discrete, autonomous entity, that your existence is bounded entirely by your skin and your skull.
Right, the whole I think, therefore I am island mentality.
Exactly. But from a Gestalt psychological perspective, that sense of total separateness isn't a hard biological fact. It's just a shape momentarily emerging from a much deeper, fluid background.
Okay, hold on. I need to push back right out of the gate here.
Go for it.
Because I have my own bank account, I have my own memories, my own bodily sensations. If I'm sitting completely alone in my room thinking my own thoughts, I feel entirely separate.
Oh, yeah.
There was literally no one else in the room with me. So how can you say I don't exist in isolation?
Well, let's look at the actual mechanics of what happens when you're alone in that room. Even in your deepest solitude, what is your inner monologue actually doing?
I guess just narrating my life.
But it mimics a dialogue. You argue with yourself, right? You console yourself, you question your own motives.
Oh yeah, constantly.
Right, so you're behaving as if you were always already a conversation. You're using language.
Well, yes. My thoughts are in English.
And did you invent English?
Obviously not.
Language is a shared space. Your words, the very tools you're using to construct your so-called isolated thoughts, were shaped by generations of other people.
Wow, okay. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, so when you sit alone in your room and think a word like love or justice, you aren't generating its meaning in a vacuum, you're stepping into this vast river of collective resonance.
So even when the room is empty, the collective is actively animating my thoughts.
Precisely. Your brain's neural pathways were literally wired by your earliest interactions with caretakers. The boundary between I and not I is not a brick wall.
What is it then?
Think of it more like the edge of a flame. From a distance, the edge of a fire looks incredibly sharp and defined. But when you get up close, it shimmers, it dissolves.
It's porous.
Exactly, it's completely porous. We are not islands, we're estuaries, places where inner and outer currents constantly meet and mix.
Okay, let's take this out of the solitary room then. Let's look at what happens when we actually interact with someone else. Because if we're these porous estuaries, that has to physically manifest when we are face to face with another human being.
It absolutely does. And this is where the concept of the field becomes a perceptual reality, not just a metaphor.
The field?
Yeah. If you watch two people in a deep, engaging conversation, you start to see the physical mechanics of this shared space.
Yeah.
They aren't just exchanging packets of auditory information like computers.
Like they lean in.
They lean in. Their postures mirror each other. If you hook them up to monitors, you'll see their breathing rhythms begin to match without either of them realizing it.
This is mirror neurons at work.
Yeah.
Right. The brain's hardware is actively trying to erase the physical distance between the two bodies.
Yes, your nervous systems are attempting to synchronize.
Because I read that if someone tells a really emotional story, the listener's brain actually simulates the physical sensation of that experience.
Yeah.
Or like when someone starts to laugh, you literally feel the laugh rise in your own diaphragm before the sound even escapes their lips.
Exactly. And in that moment of physiological synchrony, where does one person end and the other begin? Does the boundary stop at your skin?
I mean, evidently not.
Does it stop at the sound waves of your voice? Or is the reality of the situation located somewhere in that charged space between you both? Like a third presence?
It reminds me of watching a really good jazz duo improvising.
Oh, that's a great example.
If you think about it, neither musician controls the melody. The music doesn't belong exclusively to the saxophone player or the pianist.
Right, it arises entirely between them, in real time.
Yeah. It's the perfect way to visualize it. What happens in that duo if one of the musicians decides, I am the most important person here, I'm going to completely dominate this performance.
The music stiffens. It dies.
It stops being a conversation and just becomes someone shouting with an instrument.
Exactly. The flow is destroyed by the rigid assertion of the I. But when both musicians surrender to the flow, when they listen more than they perform, this living we emerges.
And paradoxically, it's in that exact surrender to the shared field that each musician's individual talent flourishes the most.
That's the beauty of it, yeah.
Okay, let me wrap my head around this. If this we is so demonstrably real, if our nervous systems crave it and our language is built on it, why is my hardware so convinced that I am just a rock?
What do you mean?
Like, why is the illusion of the isolated self so incredibly persistent? Is my brain's operating system just broken?
Not broken, no. It's just functioning exactly the way it evolved to perceive reality. To understand why you feel so individual, we have to talk about the literal architecture of human perception.
Okay, lay it on me.
This brings us to the core concept of the Gestalt, which basically translates to a unified whole or configuration.
Right.
The human brain cannot process every single piece of sensory data hitting it at once. If it tried, you would go mad.
Total sensory overload.
Exactly. So it doesn't walk through life assembling reality from tiny, chaotic fragments. It actively organizes reality into wholes.
Like the melody we just talked about. If I hear a song, I don't hear a sequence of isolated frequencies. I hear a unified emotional arc.
Yes.
And if you change just one single note in a chord, the entire emotional quality of the song shifts.
Or think about looking at a face. You don't see a geometric arrangement of an eye, a nose, and a mouth. You see your mother. You see a unified configuration.
Right.
If you stare too intensely at just the nose, the face as a whole actually vanishes into abstraction. This active process of perception is based on a mechanism we call figure formation.
Walk me through how figure formation actually works.
At any given moment, your awareness has to select something to bring into sharp focus. That object, thought, or person becomes the figure.
Okay.
And everything else around it must recede to become the background context. So if you're sitting in a coffee shop and your friend walks in, your friend becomes the figure.
And the clinking of the espresso machine, the music, the smell of roasted beans, all of that becomes the ground.
Exactly. And here is the crucial mechanical role. The figure cannot exist without the ground. They co-arise. They define each other.
Okay, I want to apply this to the listener right now, wherever they are.
Let's do it.
If I, the person listening to this, am the figure in my own perception, what is the ground?
Well, if you're walking alone, the I is the figure, and the ground is the temperature of the air, the feeling of the pavement under your shoes, or maybe the lingering stress of an unread email.
So they form the context holding my sense of self.
Yes. But here is the mechanism of human connection. When you enter into genuine contact with another person, the perceptual field literally shifts. A new unit of perception emerges.
The we becomes the figure.
Exactly.
But wait, does the I just disappear when the we forms?
Yeah.
Do I lose my identity? I mean, that sounds terrifying. That sounds like a cult.
No, you don't vanish. The I simply moves to the background. It becomes the ground.
Oh, I see. It's like a bass line in a symphony.
That's a great way to put it.
It's still there, it's still playing, and it's supporting the entire structural integrity of the music. But it's laying the foundation for a much richer harmony to take the spotlight.
That is exactly how healthy psychological contact works. You don't lose yourself. You allow yourself to act as the foundation for the shared moment.
Okay, that makes sense.
But of course, as you pointed out, the illusion of being a solitary rock is very strong. This natural rhythm between I and we doesn't always flow smoothly.
Which explains why human connection is so incredibly fraught. If slipping into the we is supposedly our natural state, why is it so exhausting? Why is there so much social anxiety, loneliness, and friction in our daily lives?
Because the perceptual field can become rigid. When the flow stops, we encounter what Gestalt psychology calls the incomplete Gestalt.
The incomplete Gestalt. What does that mean?
Unfinished business. Let's look at the mechanics of a need. When a biological or psychological need arises, say you have an urge to speak, a need to be understood, or you're simply hungry, that need creates a physical tension in your perceptual field.
It warps your attention.
Yes, like gravity.
Give me a real-world example of that gravity.
If you're starving and you walk down a city street, you don't notice the architecture, you don't see the clothing stores. The field organizes itself entirely around food.
Right. Every restaurant sign practically glows in the dark.
Exactly. Or if you're deeply lonely, you walk down that same street and you only see couples holding hands. The unmet need hijacks your perception.
Is this kind of like having a mental web browser open and you've got like 50 unclosed tabs running in the background?
Yes.
You just feel this ambient drain on your system. Your battery is dying, your fans are spinning, and you don't even know why, but it's because nothing is resolved. Is chronic exhaustion just a massive accumulation of unclosed psychological loops?
That is a brilliant way to describe it. But we have to look at what closing the tab actually means mechanically in human relationships.
Okay.
Completion isn't always about getting exactly what you want. You can't always convince someone to agree with you. Closure is about contact.
What does that mean, practically?
It means the tension dissolves through integration. It happens when you finally say the hard thing to your partner, and even if they don't like it, you are truly heard.
The reality of your experience makes contact with the reality of theirs.
Precisely. Even an argument can close the tab as long as it doesn't end in a rigid standoff between a winner and a loser, but in mutual recognition.
So the tension dissolves because the need was met by the field. But what happens when that contact is blocked over and over again? What if I never say the hard thing?
Then you enter into chronic isolation, and it is vital that we distinguish between solitude and isolation.
They aren't the same thing.
Not at all. Solitude is a healthy choice made within a rich field. It's a momentary retreat to recharge. Chronic isolation, however, is a state of emotional disconnection. Right.
When you're isolated, your I becomes frozen in the foreground. It's entirely unable to yield to the we.
The self just hardens, like a clenched muscle that you've forgotten how to relax.
Exactly. And a clenched muscle eventually causes immense pain. Psychological health is flexibility. It is the ability to breathe between I and we.
You inhale to focus on the inner experience. You exhale to merge into shared presence.
Yes. And when you lose the ability to exhale, you suffer.
Okay, time out. I need to take a step back because following this logic all the way down lead to a pretty radical philosophical reversal.
How so?
Well, we've been talking about how the self interacts with the field, but if the self is shaped by language and it naturally wants to dissolve into the we, where does the self actually come from in the first place?
This is the realization that trembles the ground beneath our most cherished assumptions.
Okay, I'm ready.
If we look closely at the direct mechanics of our own consciousness, we realize something profound. I is not the origin of experience. I is its echo. The echo, not the source. Wait, stop right there, because my brain is actively fighting this idea.
Let it fight. Let's explore it.
If my I is just an echo, who is deciding what I want for breakfast? Who feels the pain when I stub my toe? That pain is incredibly localized to my physical foot. How can the self just be an echo?
Let's break down the actual timeline of consciousness. Think about the exact split second you wake up in the morning.
Okay.
Before your brain boots up its operating system, before thought names itself, before you think, I'm tired or I have a stressful meeting today, what is there?
I guess just raw, luminous, undivided awareness.
Right. There is the sensation of light on your eyelids, the feeling of warmth from the blankets.
Yeah, there's a millisecond of just pure existence before the anxiety hits.
Exactly. Only a moment later does the narrative I rush in to stitch itself together from memory and habit.
Oh, wow.
The brain says, these sensations belong to a person named John, and John has to go to work. The self arrives late to the scene. The I is the consequence of contact with the world, not the source of it.
That is wild. It makes me think of a newborn infant.
Perfect example.
When a baby is born, neurologically, there is no conceptual me yet. There is just raw sensation warmth, hunger, the rhythm of a heartbeat. The I hasn't formed?
Right, it doesn't exist yet.
It only coalesces through thousands and thousands of repeated cycles of crying out and being met by the touch and voice of another person. The baby literally learns where its body ends because someone else is holding it.
Yes.
The self is woven entirely in the loom of relationship.
Yes, and the crucial point is that this weaving process never stops. You don't become a finished I at age 5.
You're constantly being remade.
Every conversation you have today, every glance you exchange on the subway, continues to alter the fabric of who you are. This brings up a foundational mechanism called isomorphism.
Isomorphism. Explain how that works.
It means there's a structural correspondence, like a mirror geometry, between our internal and external worlds. The way you organize a conversation with a friend uses the exact same neural and psychological structures as the way you organize your own internal thoughts. How you relate to others perfectly mirrors how you relate to yourself.
So if I'm constantly repressing my own sadness or anger, If I refuse to make contact with those parts of myself,
You will inevitably be terrified of or hostile toward the sadness and anger of other people.
wow.
The structure of the interpersonal field mirrors the interpersonal one. We are physically built for this resonance.
It reminds me of the philosopher Martin Buber. He famously wrote, "All real living is meeting." Our deepest human longing isn't actually to be perfectly autonomous, untouchable islands who never need anyone.
That from it.
Our deepest longing is for co-emergence. I always pictured two massive trees growing side by side.
I love that.
Their roots are completely intertwined underground, structurally supporting each other in the soil, but above ground, their branches are reaching for their own separate patches of sunlight. Difference isn't a threat to the connection. It's the very condition of it.
Co-emergence. That is a stunning way to visualize it. But if we scale this mechanism up from individuals to the macro level, we have to confront the reality of the world we are currently building.
We do. Because if the individual is literally born from the collective field, what does this mean for the massive crises we see every time we look at the news?
It's pretty stark.
Yeah, the extreme fragmentation, the polarization, the loneliness epidemics. Despite all our technology connecting us, it feels like we are more profoundly isolated than ever before.
We are, but looking through the lens of Gestalt, I would frame this not just as a political failure or like a social media problem. It is a massive collapse of our collective perceptual field.
A collapse of the field.
Yes, we have trained ourselves culturally and neurologically to only see figures.
What does that mean in a societal context?
It means we look at the world and we only see sharp, isolated objects. We see political enemies, we see consumers, we see data points.
Right, we just see the clashes.
We obsess over the sharp, abrasive edges of the figures, and we have completely lost the ability to perceive the ground, the shared context that holds us all.
We treat society like it's a dry abstraction, a spreadsheet, rather than a living, breathing gestalt that we are physically altering with every single choice we make.
Yes. Humanity right now behaves like a single struggling organism that is trying to become conscious of itself. We're fumbling toward integration, haunted by our collective shadows.
Desperately trying to close tabs.
Exactly, trying to seek a completion we simply cannot find using our old individualistic maps.
But this feeling of connection, this perceptual field, it doesn't just stop at humans, does it? If I am not separate from you, I'm also not separate from the environment.
Not at all. And this is where the philosophy demands deep humility. The field has no edge.
It doesn't stop at the species boundary.
Right. It extends into the rustle of the leaves, the pulse of the rivers, the silent geological weight of the mountains.
Yeah.
Indigenous philosophies have understood this mechanism for millennia. Personhood, relationship, contact. These are not exclusive properties of the human brain.
Perception isn't human-centric, it's world-centric. My eyes don't just passively act as cameras recording the world from the outside. By perceiving the world, I am actively participating in its unfolding.
You are its unfolding. The universe is perceiving itself through your eyes.
That's incredible.
So when you ask the question, where does I end and we begin? You start to realize that the question itself is flawed. It's the last artifact of an old, dying illusion.
There is no hard line.
There is only the field constantly breathing, changing, and becoming. I and we are just the temporary names we give to its endless dance.
So to bring this all the way back down to earth, what does this mean for you, the listener, right now? It completely shifts the burden of how we live our daily lives.
It really does.
The real question is no longer, where do I end and you begin? The deeper, much more urgent question is, what kind of world do we create when we falsely believe we're separate? And what becomes incredibly possible when we finally remember we are not?
Well said.
If we are all biologically and psychologically part of this continuous field, then responsibility is ontological.
Ontological responsibility, that is a heavy term. Break that down for us.
It means responsibility is baked into the fabric of your existence. You can't opt out. It's not just theory.
Right.
It means the way you sigh impatiently at the barista in the drive-thru, or the passive-aggressive tone you use in a Slack message, literally alters the tension of the shared reality we are all trapped in.
Yes.
Every single glance, every word you speak, and especially your silences, are actively organizing the field for everyone around you.
You came into this exploration today looking for boundaries. You were looking for the comfort of a hard line where you end and the world begins.
But I suspect you found only thresholds.
Exactly. So I will leave you with this final thought. If the self is not a fortress to be defended, but just a temporary verb happening in a boundless living field,
Yeah.
What would happen to you tomorrow if you finally surrendered the exhausting, heavy work of maintaining your walls and simply let yourself be the waves?